House of Ramirez does not do sports, politics, or religion. However, understanding that the city elections are this year and how impactful and important it is for all of us Atlantans, I have decided to open my platform to politics, to give a fair shot to each running candidate to tell their story. This conversation needed to happen, and we are having the conversation for the love of community. Hey guys, this is House of Ramirez. You already know what's up. We out here in Atlanta representing A-Town. So I'm here with a spectacular young man, Brandon. Brandon is a pillar of the community doing big things. You know, he's also running for a seat in the city of Atlanta. He can go ahead and tell us more about that. But without wasting any more time, I want to go ahead and introduce Brandon Goldberg. I want you to tell us who you are, where you are from, so we could get to know you.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on and for the very kind introduction. It's great to be here. And you're right, I'm running for Atlanta City Council, post one at large. So it's one of the citywide seats. So if folks live anywhere in the city of Atlanta, I'll be on the ballot. And my full name, Brandon Cory Goldberg, and that's exactly what'll show up there, using the middle name and everything. And so I'm actually originally a Jersey boy. So I came down here for school and fell in love with Atlanta, fell in love with the diversity, just folks from different walks of life, a great pace of life. It was just wonderful to see folks here, to make connections, to make friends. And I actually had family friends who had already moved here. And so it was definitely an obvious destination city with some great folks who were born and raised here as well. And I just fell in love with the city from the start. Of course, I graduated from school in the Great Recession, so I ended up moving home for a few years for a job there, and then, of course, made my way back to Atlanta in 2014. And don't ever plan to leave. It's just such a great city. So now, of course, as I said, I'm running for office, and I guess the question people might have is why. So you mentioned my involvement in the community and different groups I've been in. I'll get into in a moment, but there's an origin story, and I want to talk about real quick what that story is and why I'm invested and interested in politics and public service at all. And it goes back to the 2000 presidential election, Bush v. Gore, and it's election night. And I happened to be on vacation with my family at the time, and so my parents, my brother, and me were all in the same hotel room, but they're all fast asleep. The lights are out, and I'm sitting there awake by the glow of the television watching the returns come in. And the anchor says, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Electoral College is tied. Wake up your children. This is history in the making." And at that exact moment, my mother yelled from across the room, "Brandon, you turn that off and get to sleep." And since then, I've always been interested in politics. And I do have her blessing to share that story, but it's definitely the first moment for me of getting interested in politics and getting engaged in politics. And so over the 20 years since, something I understood very quickly is politics is not just running for office. It's being a part of the community. It's being involved and a leader in the community to actually understand what's going wrong, what's going right, what can be done, who you should be working with. And over the years, both when I still lived in New Jersey, but over the years when I've lived in Atlanta, getting involved in the community is what I do, quite frankly, for fun. People say, "What's your hobby?" And my response has always been, it's my community organizations. It's going to meetings, to events, to working with people. That's what I do after work for fun, is participate in community organizations. And so I've served, I'm the immediate past president of the Stonewall Bar Association of Georgia. That's the LGBTQ attorney association in our state. I'm very involved in the Jewish community and specifically in interreligious and interethnic dialogue. So for example, I'm a former steering member of the Atlanta Black Jewish Coalition. I've done a lot of work with HYPE. They're the Hispanic Young Professionals and Entrepreneurs, which is the Young Professionals Division of the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I've been in a lot of Jewish-Muslim dialogues and just many groups of those kinds of discussions. In the political world, I'm currently the chair of the Mid-Fulton County Democrats. I serve on the Democratic Party of Georgia State Committee. I'm involved with the Red Clay Democrats, the Young Democrats, but I understand that you have to have that balance. You can be involved in party politics, but like those organizations I mentioned earlier, you have to be involved in the community outside politics as well. But as I started to roll off those positions, it occurred to me, I need to continue serving the community. What's the next way to do that? What can I be doing to continue service as all of those roles start to end? And so this election cycle was coming up. This was a seat where I thought a change was needed. And so I decided to jump in and make my pitch to the people of Atlanta.
Wow. All I want to say is wow. How do you put all that in one sentence, bro? But that's amazing, you know, and it's good to know that it was a calling. Obviously, it was a calling, you know, that night where your mom's like, yo, shut the TV off. And you're like, but mom, that definitely was a calling. And sometimes it takes people longer than others to realize that. Other times you realize it and you go for it. And that's exactly what you did, you know, and you've been very involved ever since. So I want to go ahead and give you your kudos for that. I think it's very important that once you learn what that calling is and you jump on it, you don't lose focus. And you, my friend, have been very busy. So kudos to you. It's amazing to see another young, successful person in the city of Atlanta doing big for the community. And it's true, you know, you could have came from somewhere else. I was born in Texas and I was raised here and I represent Atlanta hard, East Atlanta to be exact. And I wish somebody would say something about that. Everything I do for the city speaks louder than me being born in Texas. So I completely get it. And shout out New Jersey. You know, I got family in Camden. So I know what's up. And I want to go ahead and shout out New Jersey as well. All your family also. I want to ask you, let's dive into a few questions that are slightly political. You know, for many of people that know me, I don't do politics, I don't do religion, and I don't do sports. But I felt that it was only right to bring candidates that are running onto my platform to let us know and let the audience know who they are as a people, right? So I want to go ahead and ask you, what do you consider to be the top 3 issues in not just the district, but in the city of Atlanta? Because the position, like you mentioned, that you're running for is actually for the whole city of Atlanta, right? So what are those 3 issues that you think that the city of Atlanta has?
When I'm put on the spot for the top 3, I always say it's the community divide, which is the number 1, and then public safety and housing equity. But I want to give an honorable mention to transportation as well, which I consider the sustainability question, transportation determining whether we have a sustainable future as a city. But let me go back to the top 3 and answer your question. So I think around town, what I've heard from people is that they always say public safety is number 1. And some people say that because they're concerned about what they're seeing as a rise in crime. And then other people say public safety because they're concerned it's being used as a wedge issue to institute new policies they may not want to see or impact other aspects of our life. So from both sides of the issue, people still identify that issue as number 1. But for me, it's community divide. If you take a look at the 2017 runoff results map for the mayoral election between Mary Norwood and Mayor Bottoms, it's a very, very stark map. And what it basically shows, and I hope the folks listening will Google this, but basically it shows the top half of the city voted for Mary Norwood, the bottom half of the city voted for Mayor Bottoms, and it's almost like there's 2 cities in one. It was that clear a difference. And when you dive into the actual statistics, it wasn't just that one candidate won the precincts here and the other won the precincts there. It was 80 to 100% in most of the precincts, one way or the other. So we have a divided city, not only along racial lines, but along ideological lines, political lines. And the result of that is that people are basically in their own corners and not talking to each other. And so when it comes to other important issues like dealing with public safety or housing equity, as my other 2 in the top 3, we're not solving the issue. Things are being held up, they're being debated, they're not being implemented, or something's being passed, but it's being undercut by a huge segment of the population. Buckhead is looking to break away, which would be disastrous for all parties involved. And so we have this problem that's not being solved because folks aren't talking to each other. On the public safety side, you know, I think it's a little bit of both. You know, on the one hand, we are seeing more severe crime in certain parts of the city, like Buckhead and Midtown, but we have to be honest, these kinds of crimes have been going on in other parts of the city for years, and we never really talked about them. But now that they're happening in Buckhead and Midtown, people are talking about them. Now, don't get me wrong, obviously that they need to be dealt with. Those are serious issues, and I'm not underplaying it at all, but we should also ask why we haven't been talking about these issues for years. We also need to make sure that we as a community have police that are effective but equitable. And a lot of that goes into how they're trained, but also what kind of diversion programs we have. So PAD is one example. That's the Policing Alternatives and Diversion Initiative. And these are folks like social workers and mental health folks who can intervene instead of police officers in a lot of situations. The problem is, and I had a conversation with a leader from PAT about a month ago or so, and I asked her, do folks in the city know that PAT exists, that this alternative to policing is even available? And she laughed because the answer is no. People don't know the program exists. And it's sort of one example of Atlanta having a program, but if the people don't know about it, they can't use it. And if the police aren't properly trained on when to use an alternative, when to say it shouldn't be me, it should be PAT or another entity, then they're not going to even know to use it either. And so getting past those barriers is something that we need to do if we're going to have effective public safety that's also equitable. And it's really important that we have both. And the last issue on housing, people are like me and you, people are moving to Atlanta because it's a great place to be, but far more people are moving here than we have homes for. And what that means is rents are going through the roof, property values are going through the roof, which means people are being taxed out of homes that they have lived in for a long time. And so we need to be talking about ways to deal with that. Of course, developers need to have a certain amount of affordable housing. We should just kind of assume that at this point, but we actually have to enforce it. We can't have deals or ways for them to pay a fee or get around that requirement in their developments. We actually need the units to be a part of their projects with very specific standards and quantities. But we also need to explore alternatives for housing, be it allowing rezoning for basement use or carriage houses. But what's really going to stop us from making progress there is the fact that some parts of the city need to have different types of techniques than other parts of the city. And so there needs to be a lot of engagement with neighborhood associations to basically make the sell. You know, if a member of city council thinks something in housing equity or any other issue is a good idea, they should go out to the neighborhood associations, to the NPUs, and make the pitch and try and convince them that this is the right thing. But we shouldn't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And what I mean by that is, let's say we have a great idea for rezoning or for housing, and some parts of the city are okay with it and some aren't. We shouldn't wait until we can do a citywide effort, or we should implement it wherever we can get it done then and there, so that we move things forward. And I realize that that will lead to a step-by-step approach, but we need to solve some of these problems as quickly as possible wherever we can. And so I absolutely favor moving forward where we can and continuing to make the sale, the pitch to neighborhoods where we're not getting that buy-in. For all these issues, what I've done with my campaign is establish advisory committees. So for all those organizations I mentioned to the first question, folks that I've worked with on various issues, I brought them into the campaign to work with me. I have 5 of them: diversity engagement, COVID-19 economic recovery, housing equity, transportation, and public safety. And the folks on the committees come from different backgrounds, different walks of life, different ideologies and perspectives on the issues. I need to hear from people who both agree with me and don't agree with me, so I can see, okay, what neighborhoods are going to buy into what? What are the kinds of plans that folks who disagree on the issue will all buy into? What's the compromise? And then we decide whether we like the compromise or it's not going to work. But I need to know what the thoughts are out there from community leaders of different backgrounds. And for example, my public safety committee has community activists, but also a former police officer. I just need to hear those different voices. And so that's how I've been building the campaign. And I threw in transportation as a fourth because we got a lot of problems there, but my top 3 begins and ends with community divide.
Yeah, and I think that you brought up key points that affect all of us and concern all of us. One way or another, we're all dealing with either the housing, the public safety, and even transportation. That's big. For someone that hasn't owned a car since 2018, public transportation is everything, and like you mentioned, it's a public divide. Not knowing that we have certain tools to our reach here in Atlanta can be a disadvantage. So it all starts in the community as well. Piggyback riding on what you mentioned, starting in the association, starting in the NPUs, nipping stuff in the butt before it becomes something out of control. And then it has to be a citywide issue. We can nip it in the butt if we're constantly engaging in our local communities. Being informed is very important. If you need to ask a question, ask the question. If you need to research something, ask someone or look it up. It's that easy. So I will agree with you there. I want to ask you, what makes you want to do this job? What is your motivation? A lot of people have politics in their family, other people don't, and that's fine. You obviously have a passion for it. You want to help Atlanta get better. We're already a great city, but you want to make it get better, right? What is your motivation? What pushes you to do this?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And as I said earlier, this is what I do for fun. Being involved in the community is my hobby. And so even yesterday, I was at the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce's event for their 50 most influential Latinos. What a great event! Just to be out there, just to be with people. And this is before COVID, but certainly, safely as the pandemic lifts. I say in theory because of the variant, but just to be amongst people, to be talking with, I'm not Latino, but to be amongst people from that community or any other community, to me, it's exciting, it's engaging, but also there are very serious issues that folks are dealing with, and they vary from community to community. And I want to be someone who can find those solutions and implement them, work with people. We talk about problems that have been going on for a long time, and I think there's an opportunity for a great deal of satisfaction to have the city reach its full potential, as you said, to address these issues finally and chart a path forward. There's a great deal of personal satisfaction for me, but also I live in the city. For me, I took MARTA for 6 years. I commuted on MARTA for 6 years. So I favor a strong MARTA system, but I'll also tell you, I took the train. The bus, for folks who don't use it every day, there's a barrier to entry, because if you just walk up to a MARTA bus station, you don't know what you're doing, and there's no way to figure it out. So that is a huge problem. Something that my transportation committee looked at, and all my committees look at, are other cities that have solved these problems. And something Washington, D.C. does is they color code their buses, which sounds really simplistic, but it's effective. So for example, if you're going to the Falcons, I know you're not a sports person, but if you're going to the Falcons game or the Atlanta United game, get on a black and red bus. It's that easy. It's that easy. People will board those buses from any part of the city if it's simple. If it's easy, make the Buckhead to the Pittsburgh line purple, whatever we want to do. And there are just simple solutions that we don't implement. And so for me, finding those solutions, identifying them. When I established my 5 advisory committees, I said to a few friends of mine, I get to have 5 committees and I'm the chair of all of them. That's amazing. That's reason to run for office all by itself. So, it's running for office is obviously very time consuming, very stressful, but there's a lot of fun to be had too. And I'm really enjoying the journey.
Definitely tell you got the gears going. We're over here feeling your energy. So that's amazing. I want to ask you, what do you bring to this job position that's unique to you? A lot of people say, oh, my organizing skills or my, whatever. What does this job position, when you're sitting in it, what do you bring to it that's unique only to you?
So it's along the same lines as those committees. It's having the experience of working with people from different backgrounds and forging what is going to work. And maybe something that I don't like entirely, maybe something they don't like. That's how compromise works. But I was on a meeting with environmentalists maybe a few weeks ago or so. And when I was talking with them, I said, we're all on the same page. It's a progressive group. We all understand climate change. We all understand what needs to be done. But if we come up with a great idea that never gets passed, it's not very effective. If we get something passed that is undercut by a large segment of the community and not implemented, not very effective. And so I want to figure out what we can actually do that'll pass, that'll get implemented, that'll move the city forward. Any step in the right direction is a step in the right direction. So it's my experience of doing that, bring those folks together. My committees are on my website. You can see who these folks are, what their pictures are, what their bios are, who they are, what their backgrounds are, because I want to run my city council office like I run my campaign, which is a community office of people from diverse backgrounds, diverse perspectives and ideologies. But what makes my campaign different is that I'm doing it out loud. I'm making it a central part, a central purpose of my campaign to have these collectives, to have these discussions openly. And that's exactly what I'm gonna do with my council office. It's not just gonna be me casting votes. It's gonna be the community working with me, deciding how those votes should be cast, how those ordinances should be drafted.
Being transparent and being loud in everything that you do, it means you stand your ground. You're assertive in what you're doing because it works. So that's amazing. I am unapologetically me at all times. I am the loudmouth in the room at all times. Of course, I could be quiet and listen, but you get what I'm saying. So when you said loud, it means being diverse, being unique, and being transparent at any given time. And that's what people need. People need the transparency nowadays, especially so much going on. It's essential that everyone's included, but you're transparent. So I want to go ahead and thank you for that. I also want to ask you, why should we vote for you over the other candidates that are running for this seat?
Well, I've said the committee a few times as an example of the kind of leadership that I bring to the table, but I want to focus on something else, a different perspective that I bring also, and that's we've identified these major issues, but the city has a history of dealing with these issues only within the boundaries of the city. They're not looking at these issues as metro area issues. When it comes to transportation, the expansion of MARTA is an obvious example of that, but also housing equity, public safety, all of these issues, COVID economic recovery, have to extend south of the city, right into South Fulton, into College Park, north of the city, into Sandy Springs, Doraville, Decatur, all of these communities need to be a part of the discussion, and we need to be working together because, and I'll use housing equity as an example, when folks get priced out of their homes, either as renters or homeowners, and move outside the city of Atlanta, what we've seen is that, of course, unfortunately, a lot of the folks in those situations are of lower economic levels. And the city of Atlanta may have had a number of services, human services, to work with folks who need some of those services, but and not that they're ideal, but there's some kinds of human services at the city level. A lot of these suburbs don't have those kinds of programs in place because they haven't had a need to, quite like the city of Atlanta itself has. And so you've got a multi-tiered problem of folks who are being forced out of Atlanta, moving to a suburb, needing those kinds of services and programs more than ever, but now they're living in a jurisdiction that doesn't have it. And so it's just a cascading effect, it's a snowball effect of problems because Atlanta is not working with the other neighborhoods and the other cities. And so we need to approach these issues that way. The way that ends up falling back on Atlanta, by the way, if people want to know, is that when folks of lower income have these issues, some turn to crime. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that all crimes are committed by poor people. Rich people commit crimes all the time. But when people in desperate situations are going to turn to crime, they're going to come back to where the money is, which, by the way, is Buckhead. So if Buckhead thinks breaking away is going to solve the problem, then they're mistaken, quite frankly, because forget about Atlanta, even the folks moving to the suburbs who are coming into Buckhead to commit crimes are going to continue to do so. And so as I talk with leaders from the suburbs, from the other cities around Atlanta, what I hear is Atlanta is this behemoth that doesn't work with us, or, they're part of the regional commission, but they're just a member. They're not really engaging. Some are, some aren't. Council's not really on board. We need to change that. And that's something that is a central part of my perspective, a central part of my approach on all these issues. So you may have a bunch of candidates who can identify the problem, but I can identify the solutions with my committees and then identify the route to get there, which is working not only inside the city, but understanding that these issues don't end at our geopolitical boundaries. We have to have relationships with the other cities. I have a lot of those through the other community organizations, through the Jewish community, the LGBTQ community. I've worked with folks from these other cities plenty of times and plenty of other issues before, and it's just going to be continuing on that journey with them.
And that's appreciated. When I go visit family, I have family all throughout Georgia. So when I go visit family in Gwinnett County, I literally, and coming back to the city, I take 2 buses to the Doraville train station, then the Doraville train station to go home. So yeah, so it's definitely needed. The situation is bigger than Atlanta, and we're doing a great job. So shout out everybody that's currently working, has been working, and paving the way for us to come in and carry on that job to do even a better job. So we do have situations in the city where we do have to expand outside and, partner up with our sisters and brother counties. So it is something that it's a cycle. I would say it's a cycle. So like you were mentioning, to think that we can nip one situation in the city and that's the end of it is is kind of delusional because it's a whole cycle. We need to find the solution to many other solutions to get to the point of that one. So it all ties in together. It's a community effort. And I'm so glad that you're engaged as well outside of the city of Atlanta, because it promises that you're going to continue to keep those connections strong and build on that. We need that. And, everybody currently that's sitting has been doing a great job. So I hope that everybody that moves forward into the seats just continues the great job. I want to ask you, at the end of all of my interviews, I always do a House of Ramirez shout out. So I have my platform and I'm giving you the spotlight to go ahead and tell people who you are. But now I want you to tell us, to put the spotlight on people that have been in your corner, either in your personal life or your career life. Go ahead and shout them out, but also give us your website and your social media information so we could follow you and support you.
Well, that's great what you just asked me to do, because when we go on these journeys and we walk the paths, of course, we don't walk them alone. And to quote Hillary Clinton, right, it takes a village. And so I just want to run through quick, some of these organizations that I mentioned I've been a part of or have worked with that do amazing things. So American Jewish Committee, Stonewall Bar Association of Georgia, Georgia Equality, Lambda Legal, the Jewish Federation, the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Georgia Muslim Voter Project. What a great organization that is. I mentioned the Atlanta Black Jewish Coalition, the Urban League, 100 Black Men. I mean, quite frankly, the list goes on. And the folks who are involved in these organizations are just tremendous individuals. And what I hope that people take away from this discussion is that everyone listening should join one more organization in the community. I know that the folks who are probably listening to this are already engaged, right? They're interested in the discussion that you're having, so they're engaged folks. And maybe in a number of organizations, you can always add one more hour a month. And I know folks may have kids, may have jobs or two jobs. I promise you, if you join just one more organization, the impact you will make on our city will be tremendous. And so I'm going to give a shout out to everyone listening, because so many of you are already doing the hard work with organizations like the ones that I've mentioned. My website is www.brandoncorygoldberg.com. My middle name is spelled C-O-R-Y, brandoncorygoldberg.com. You can send me an email, brandon@brandoncorygoldberg.com. And I'll make sure that you have my contact information as well if you want to share it with the recording as well, so that folks can have it.
Definitely go ahead and put your website and your information down below from this video so everyone can easily just click and follow you and support you. It's amazing that even when you're given the spotlight, you're highlighting other people, it's beautiful to see that. You're definitely engaged in the community and encouraging others to do the same thing, because it takes community to cause positive change. So that's what it's all about. I want to thank you for coming on my show and just making the time. I know you're extremely busy right now. And this is the first time, it's not the last time. I want to thank you. And until next time, Brandon, thank you so much.
Thank you. And you're absolutely right. These can't be the only conversation. It's just the start of ongoing discussion. So thank you so much for having me on.
Make sure to follow House of Ramirez on all social media platforms.